we back with another episode. You see, we are here in real life this time, you know what I'm saying? Got my co-host here, of course.
Yo, what it do?
That boy Marquis.
Yes, sir.
And we got a really special episode today. We got a pioneer, a music expertise, a DJ, you know what I'm saying? Somebody that I learned from. And this is my uncle, Talib Shabazz, here today. You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir. And so we got this episode here because I go to Georgia State, and we got a senior project, and so I chose to talk about the history of hip hop and just how it unfolded. He's from New York. I'm from Atlanta. Pretty big meccas of hip hop and just music itself, and so I was like, okay, I gotta have on the podcast. So,
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So what do we want to start with, man?
But I noticed that Coco gets food.
What do you mean?
I don't get no food. Man.
Oh my god!
Coco got food. She said it was good.
Alright, man, look.
I ain't getting no food either. It's alright. And I'm actually here every day. But it's cool.
I'm hungry. Let's talk about food. So, to start with, you know what I'm saying? You from New York. Just give us some of your background on that. How you got down here to Atlanta. All that, you know.
Alright, well, like I said, we grew up in New York City, Laurelton, Queens, Springfield Gardens, South Jamaica. I had a friend of mine who was, when we were in the 7th grade, his brother had DJ equipment. Mm-hmm. And Jason one day invited me over to the house, and he was going to teach me how to spin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I must have been all of 12 years old.
Right.
And unfortunately, his brother Mustafa caught us, and you know. But you know, he was like, "Yo, look, if you're gonna spin, you spin out of that crate." He pointed to a crate that was what we at that time was called the octopus breakbeats, and he was like, "Yo, when I say that you're good enough, then I can let you spin out of these crates."
Right. Okay.
The octopus breaks were basically all the break beats that the rappers used to rap over at the parties.
Okay.
So stuff like the Big Beat, Aerosmith's Walk This Way, Cheryl Lynn's To Be Real. All of these songs were on these compilation albums, and that's what the DJs would cut when it was time to cut the breaks. You know, that the octopus breaks were the ones to cut. And by cutting, I mean basically just backspinning and allowing the rappers time to rap.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Giving them space.
There was no instrumentals.
Right.
So what we did was, the reason that the songs were called breaks were because the breakdown section of the song was pretty much just like drums and maybe a bass guitar. Or, you know, just like a little piano or something like that. Just something that changed from the original song. And exactly. Okay. But it gave the drummer something. You know what I mean? And the drummer with the drummer, it's like, okay, yeah. Now MCs we rap on the break beats, which is how cats are called B-boys and B-girls, break boys and break girls, because we dance and we rap on the breaks. Did you ever see the Get Down on Netflix?
I never.
Oh my gosh! Wow. We're gonna talk about this guy. Yeah, so Marquis. You know what I'm saying? But it's like in the show when they were talking about the get down part. That's the break. So if you just allowed, you know, what started off as maybe, you know, somewhere between 4 and 16 measures of just a drummer, you know, getting busy. Wound up becoming the foundation for what we do. You know what I mean? Because now the DJ, if there was only a 4 measure break, then that means the DJ was working hard, because now he's got to, he's got to bring the record back, start it on time so that the cat who's rapping doesn't go off beat.
Right.
So not also, he's back spinning the record, bam, bringing it back in, back spinning the record, bringing it in, and bringing it in on time, and doing little cuts and scratches here and there, for effect, especially if he knew the cat who was rapping, because now it was like at that point, freestyles were considered anything that wasn't part of a song, not just off the top of the head. You know what I mean? So if you knew your MC's freestyles,
right,
then you could drop the beat out, chicka 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 bam,
and bring back in.
Right. So that's that's what that's the foundation. That's how I started. Even as I teach DJs, how to spin, we always start with the foundation. Excuse me. So fast forward 3 years. Now, my mom bought me my first set of turntables, and I had a radio that was about the size of this section of the couch.
Okay.
And that's what I used.
Yeah. That's huge.
It was a 90-watt speaker, had a burglar alarm on it.
Real deal.
But that's what I used, and I was doing house parties, where we lived in Queens. So now, and my sister, your mom, was what I called my party starters. So I would get hired, to DJ the party. I would bring Shakira and my man Andre and a couple of other folks, and my man Don, who was my MC.
And plant them in the party.
Exactly.
To just
get the party going.
Right.
Because don't nobody in a house party, don't nobody want to be the first one up. My sister don't mind being the first one up. So it was,
I didn't see that before. Yeah.
That's where I get that from.
So that was the whole thing. It was about DJing a party. It was me getting into DJing. So when we moved down here in '86, our cousin Bryce was living here at that time, and Bryce later became part of Mantronics and then part of Groove Theory. But we all grew up in Queens together, and Bryce was already living here. He had formed a rap group here called Three the Hard Way. So it was Bryce Lover, Chili C, Royal T, and Larry Lair. Larry Lair and Royal T were brothers, so they were kind of the DJs, and Bryce and Bill, or Chili C, was the MCs.
Okay.
And they had already started doing parties and stuff here in town with Kiss. Well, at that point, it was the old version of Kiss 104. So there was a guy there by the name of Larry Steele, who was the morning guy. Get your head out of bed with Larry Steele, and another guy named Mitch Faulkner, who was the program director. And the Three the Hard Way was part of their little ensemble. So if they had shows or something going on in LaGrange, or so they would be the opening act.
Okay.
So when I came down, I kind of fell in with Bryce's crew.
Right.
So they were already doing parties. They had equipment. I bought my records and my equipment, and we all just started kind of running together. Bryce moved back to New York, and his crew became my crew. So we all started doing stuff. And this is summer of '86. So, like one time we did a party for my man that lived off of Deerfield. Deerfield off Old National, behind the police station.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All that little subdivision there. There was a guy that lived back there. His name was Ricky Walker. And Bryce and the crew had already kind of got in with Ricky Walker, because Bill was, oh man, I really wish you could have met Chili C.
Oh man.
This dude was, you'd have swore he was from New York, but Bill was from Ohio. But Bill was the original Biggie. You know what I mean? Because Bill was a big guy, but he had flavor. He could rap, and I mean, he talked to chicks all day. I mean, he was Biggie.
Wow, that's tough.
So we're at Ricky's house, and I'm just meeting Ricky. Come to find out, Ricky Walker is the guy who was promoting the Fresh Festival.
Okay.
The Fresh Fest was like the big tour with all the rap acts. Mm-hmm. So Run DMC, LL, Houdini, Salt and Pepper. Okay. Yep. Right. That was the New York City Fresh Festival, and it, would go around the country. Actually, Ricky Walker now owns the Universal Circus.
Oh wow!
Really? So same
he's
dude.
Good.
Yeah, he's been promoting concerts and stuff forever. Casual Cal, who was the ringmaster, of the Universal Circus, was his MC back in the day. So this was all like, this is crazy. Folks don't, it's things are continuous. Your crew is your crew. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we're at Ricky's house, and this little cat comes up. And he's like, yo, I want to get on. And I'm looking at him. The guy had left me alone. I'm spinning. And this little dude comes up to me and he's like, yo, man, let me get some of that. And I'm like, who the hell? Like, I don't know, back in those days, DJs were really selective about who they let see their records, because records were really like part of what set you apart from other DJs. And that was the thing. Like when we were growing up, and I was really getting into spinning, I would go to Manhattan and buy my records. Mm-hmm. I wasn't buying from the local places in Queens.
We just went up there. It was high price, man.
Oh man, everything's high price.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. For me to be different, I made sure I had I had the break beats and I had the new joints.
Right.
So the guy comes up and he's like, I'm like, nah, I'm not really trying to let you on, and then finally everybody's coming back and they're like, oh no, he's cool. This is Lil Jermaine. And so Lil Jermaine comes in and Lil Jermaine gets on the wheels. So find out he's like, later on I discovered that this dude has been on tour with Houdini and Run DMC, but he lives here in Atlanta.
This ain't Jermaine.
Yes, Jermaine Dupri. Yes.
Wow.
Jermaine was all of about 12.
Wow.
And so that's how we got cool. And so now, now it's the whole College Park. Look, the reason why College Park is College Park right now is because of what we did. You know what I mean? I ain't gonna try and brag about it. That's all.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, we were throwing the parties. We threw parties, and College Park was crazy back then. There was a crew called Triple Crush. Triple Crush used to throw parties in Brandy. It was called Brandy Chase at that time. Then it's Concord Place right there on Dobby Road. I know that. What we were doing was we were in Southampton. We would rent the clubhouse and throw parties. Write up little flyers and stuff like that. So College Park has always been on fire. Right. What I mean? Okay. Even back then. Plus then was the Fellwood MD rivalry. You know what I mean? That was for real. And we got into crazy. Just thinking about, it's like what can it's like I want to tell you so much, right? Because we don't usually get a platform like this. Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, so that was the whole thing. For me running with Bryce's crew, well not Bryce's crew, but with me running with Bill and Tony and Larry, and then getting out myself because I went to Northside. Okay. So I was at Northside. Shakira was at Maze, and then wound up transferring over to MD. And then North Clayton, we had all of my boys were basically in school over at North Clayton. And they have, in addition to our crew, which was my man Fly Tie, his little brother DJ Wiz, who Wiz wound up producing like all kinds of people in this city. My man Rick, who was from the Bronx, and his brother Butch. we had this whole little crew. It was us, the tough ass team. That's what we called ourselves. The tough ass team, TAT. And then we had there was the cats called the Fun Crew, FUN, and they were at North Clayton. Okay. And FUN stood for From Up North. So there was a guy from St. Louis. There was a guy from New York. A guy from I think like Boston or something like that. So everybody kind of it was just. It was it was all about still throwing parties, having fun, trying to bring a little bit of the excitement that we knew, because we missed home. You know what I mean? But Atlanta at that time, Atlanta's always been on fire. You know what I mean? Like, when I moved here, summer of '86, in addition to all the skating rinks that were around, Jelly Bean, Skate Town, Golden Glide, Sparkles.
Is Cascade here yet?
No, Cascade wasn't here.
Oh, wow.
No, it was Jelly Bean on the south side. If you went to southwest, it was the Bean, and the Bean had the skate floor and the dance floor.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, skates come off and everybody starts leaking. It's like, but Atlanta also had 3 teen clubs.
Oh,
so for anybody under 21, you could, if you was out in Lithonia, you could go to Kicks.
If
you were on the north side, like Sandy Springs, Marietta, there was a spot there called the Mardi Gras, and the Gras was like, everybody was at the Gras, And then they had a teen nightclub out at Six Flags called Graffitis, and they treated it like it was a ride. So you go in to Graffitis, you'd spend about 20 minutes, and then they'd cycle you out, and then the next crew would come in, and and it was 21 and under. So there was, there was always something to do for us, for kids, and I tried my best to get in where I could fit. So in Atlanta, I spun at Graffitis. I was one of the last DJs that we had before they closed Graffitis. I spun at the Gras. And, it was about, just doing little parties around, like high school parties and stuff like that.
So party promotion was big.
Yeah. Like, look, I mean, like cats like Jerome, there's this cat named Jerome Rowe, and your sister introduced me, your mom introduced me to him. This guy still throws parties. Wow. You know what I mean? And this is like early 90s. Right. You know what I'm saying? Every now, but what it was, for everybody who went to high school here, everybody starts going away to college after they graduate, but they come home on the holidays. Yeah. So Jerome would throw holiday parties. Yeah. So, exactly. So you get somebody from North Atlanta, you get somebody from Westlake, and, that's the point person. Yeah. And they're responsible for all their people,
Oh, that's what's up.
I mean, Atlanta was dope, man. Mm-hmm. And Atlanta was a dance city. You know what I mean? All the stuff. People danced. People didn't just, kind of hang out. You know what I mean? Like now, it's a whole lounge scene. Everything is lounge. You got couches.
Get your hookah.
You know what I mean? You just sitting there.
Yeah, it's a kickback. I'm not a fan of it.
Atlanta was a party town, and people used to gig down here.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Look, okay, I got my notes.
Okay. So I'm just so that's the beginning. You know what I mean? I know that I kind of went around the world.
Oh no, I love it.
But that's how the whole thing started. I was DJing in New York. I brought my DJing down here, and I got turned out on the Atlanta style, and it's just rolled since then.
For sure. So I know, cause shout out to my Professor Thrash.
Ow.
You trying to get some extra credit?
No, but listen.
That's how you do it.
So I was telling him about, that I was going to interview you, and he was like, "What's your name?" I was like, "Talib." He was like, "Talib Shabazz," blah blah blah, right? Yeah. And so, so when you got down here in '86, when did you start going to because they met at Georgia State. Right. So when did you start going there? And then I know you was at the radio station and everything.
Yeah. So what happened was, I started college late. Went to DeVry for a little while. Wound up meeting a whole nother little crew from DeVry that we were doing all kinds of stuff together, throwing parties and whatnot. I had gone back to New York and was there for, I think like 6 months. Came back and was like, okay, I'm going to get back. I'm going to really try and pursue the school thing. It's time to try to knuckle down and get the education. So I didn't want to go back to DeVry because that's not what I wanted. I found out that Georgia State had a program called Commercial Music and Recording.
Wow.
And I was like, it became the music business program, music industry program.
Okay.
But at that time it was called Commercial Music and Recording. And I was like, yo, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, yo, by this point, this is 89, 90.
Okay.
So I'm 20 years old at this point, and returning to school. And I had started, okay, so let me back this just a second.
Right.
So what happened was I was living in New York. I had gone back to New York, started working. St. Ides Malt Liquor came out and was pretty much taking the world by storm. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was old English,
I'm going to see where this goes.
Yeah. So St. Ides was out, and St. Ides announced on the radio station that they were doing a contest and they wanted somebody to come up with a commercial. So I went to my man, Ike Lee, who was living in Rosedale, Queens. And Ike had already done some production with Bryce and the crew.
Right.
So I said, hey, look, St. Ides is doing this thing. Can you hook me up a track? So submitted the track. It was 1 minute long. It won third.
Wow.
So, and they said that they wanted to actually use the spot. So I had to I got a quick education on music publishing. Because now I had a jingle that I wrote that was in the marketplace, and I needed to protect it and try and derive some money from it, from the performance. So I met a guy named Leotis Clyburn who worked at ASCAP, and one of Bryce's people. Bryce hooked me up, and I met Leotis, and Leotis got me signed up with ASCAP.
Nice.
Okay, so I had some friends of mine. This is all like winter time, so maybe the contest was like September, October. By November, I got a call from my man. He's like, he said, hey, look, we're getting ready to put out Muhammad, one of my other boys. And Muhammad had adopted the name 3 the Hard Way. And he was signed to this guy, and he was like, yo, he said, basically, we're putting Muhammad out, but we don't have a publishing company. I was like, so they wanted to use my publishing company as their in-house publishing.
Right.
Okay. So that's how I got. The guy who was signed was a dude named Muhammad. The name of the group was 3 the Hard Way, and the label was a new startup label by this cat out of the Bay Area named Henry Lee, and Henry Lee's nickname was Noonie. So his company was Noontime Records, and that's what. So I did the publishing for Noontime's first single.
Oh wow! Wow.
I found out quickly that I'm totally new to this aspect of it.
Right.
I've never really been involved in the business side of music before. I've been a DJ. Rapper, I wanted to do some records, but, that had not really presented itself by this point. And I was now trying to pursue this jingle thing, thinking I could make some money writing some commercials.
Right.
All right, so I do the publishing for for noontime, and then I found out that unless a record is getting promoted, there's no way to earn any publishing because there's no performance. Publishing is all about performance. So if you write a song, your song gets played on the radio, that's a performance. Somebody heard it, it's generated some income.
It's been promoted.
Right. So that's how I got into promotions. Because now I got a record that's not earning no money. It's not earning no money.
It's just there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started promoting to, I got a couple of magazines, College Music Journal, CMJ, Cashbox was another one, and these were industry magazines that would basically report, have DJs from radio stations and record pools reporting the records that they played, and from all those they generated a list, top 20, top 50.
Okay.
So I started getting these magazines and stuff and writing to people whose names I'm seeing in these magazines. And one of the people's names was Randall Moore, and Randall Moore was at Georgia State, and Randall Moore was a college music. Randall was reporting to everybody at that point. He was reporting to anybody who would take his playlist because he was trying to build the radio show at Georgia State. So talked to him, got the record played, and I would go by there, just kind of shooting shit, and we became cool.
Yeah.
Randall reveals to me that his co-host is leaving, and he's trying to find he's having a hard time finding a co-host. And he was like, I was like, man, please, we know 100 people out there. Right. He was like, yeah, but they have to go to Georgia State.
Yeah.
I go to State.
For sure.
He was like, you do go to State, don't you? I was like, yeah. He was like, you be interested? I was like, come on, man, I'm a DJ. You know what I mean? Be on the radio? Yeah, let's do it. So 3-4 months later, by August of '91, I was on the air at Georgia State.
Nice.
Taking classes. And that opened everything else up, because from there, we started doing, a guy called me and was like, hey man, I got a group that I'm getting ready to put out. I need you to, would you be interested in, helping me promote it? What do I need to do? No, I need you to just go around to the record stores and put some posters up and, go to a couple of clubs or whatever and hand out some CDs. Okay, shit. And that's how street promotion started.
Yep, street team, right.
We became the first street team and the first project that, first project that we worked was Farside's first album. Bizarre Ride to the Far Side. Passing Me By on it. So we started, I had a couple of other people who were getting tapped at the same time because this was now becoming the trend in the music business. Is to have some guys who can do grassroots promotions. Okay. So Brian, Calhoun, Darren Davis, and myself, we started a street promotions company called it Keep It Street.
That's hard.
And nobody's ever used that before either. Ever since, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah. But that's what we was street is. So it was Keep It Street Marketing and Promotions. And the first record that we worked as a company was the Chronic album.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. And that joint, it's so funny because people, one thing that you learn when you're really into this music business is that people who are supposed to be tastemakers and influencers usually don't know shit. You know what I mean? Like, they are the squeakiest wheel. You know what I mean? Honestly. Yeah. Because it's not about talent, it's not about the, all of that stuff. It's really about making noise and who makes the most noise. So we were getting and at one point, Keep It Street, we represented everybody. Like, Warner Brothers was a client, Atlantic was a client, Elektra was a client, Flavor Unit Records was a client, Death Row was a client. We were the only street team. We were the only street team that Death Row hired in Atlanta. I mean, and we worked for them for 10 years. And people always trying to talk shit about Suge. I'm like, yo, you can't say nothing bad about Suge to me. Because Suge, if no other check was on time, Death Row's check was on time.
Right.
And Death Row got major priority. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. I got pictures from. You gotta really look at my Facebook page. When you finally putting this all together, just look at the Facebook stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because I put a lot of these memories on Facebook, and I mean, man, we was working everybody, the alcoholics, hey, you name it, man. We did everybody. You know.
No.
So yeah. And then in '93 we okay, so that's when Earwax opened.
Oh, okay.
And that was my record store. And Earwax was kind of a product of, again, me just kind of being in the right place at the right time. I had worked for a couple of record stores in town, Bernard's Records, who was over at the West End, and then they had another store at Avondale, and I worked both of those. And then there was another guy who opened a record store called Spin City, which was out on Old National, and he had a second location in Lithonia, and I worked both of those. Once I left Spin City, I was like, you know what, I was on the air, and I was doing some promotions already, so it was kind of like, well, you know, I'm really looking to get some of these records that I don't hear in Atlanta in the DJ's hands in Atlanta. So I took one of my distributors, you know, I don't know, do you know what a one-stop distributor is?
No.
Okay, so back in the day, because they don't really, I mean, there's distributors now, but they don't really do the same function.
Right.
Sony, let's say Sony has a catalog, and Walmart can buy direct from Sony. But Earwax could not buy direct from Sony because we didn't have enough buying power. So we would use a wholesaler, which was called, in those days it was called a one-stop distributor. So we would buy, Sony would sell the one-stop the same product, and then we, as the independent store, would buy all of Sony's product from them.
Say it again. I coughed.
So basically, one stop was a middleman.
Middleman. Yeah. Okay, that what I got.
I mean, right.
Yeah.
So, so I called a distributor who was not based in Atlanta, who was based in New York, and I would buy 12 inches from him and sell them to my peoples. You know, cats who was on the radio with me and stuff like that. So I go to my man Jazz, and I'm trying to get Jazz's business, you know, trying to get him to buy some records from me. And he's like, man, it's so funny you should say that because I've been thinking about opening a record store. So let's talk. So we start talking. Earwax was supposed to be, if everything had gone the way it was looking, we would have been out on Covington Highway and Memorial Drive. But a dude, one of our boys, calls us and he's like, yo, man, I got this spot downtown that you need to see. We were like, downtown? Downtown. And so we looked at this place. It was right at the corner of 11th and Peachtree. One half was a detail shop that Zaki was running. In the middle was an auto mechanic, and then they had like the office of the auto mechanic shop, and that we took that over, and that's what became Earwax Records. And we were open for 15 years. You know,
nice.
So, and you know, Jazz was a DJ, I was a DJ. One of the guys who helped us open, Richard, was a record collector, so he was doing all the record shows. So we were actually selling vinyl, you know, and we quickly became like the place to be, you know, when it came to new music.
Right.
You know.
So
I know that kind of got away from the top from where we originally started, but that's how I got to the radio, and that's how the radio kind of springboarded everything else that I did.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like we already know the story of New York and most of its details and its important turning points. You know, started there. Was it Sugar Hill first? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so when I sat down and did research, I did some research on Atlanta because that's where I'm from, and so I know there was a sound called Miami bass back in the day,
Right.
and I was doing further research. I'm like, oh, there was an Atlanta bass.
Yeah.
And when I really think about it, I know songs that are Atlanta based songs.
Yes.
Like, what is it? Did they say "Swing My Way" was one? "Swing My Way."
Atlanta bass record.
What's the other one? Yeah. What's the other
My
one? DJ Go. Yeah, My Boo.
DJs.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, Atlanta sound. Atlanta. You know, up until. I mean, well, we've always had a sound, but our sound has never always been distinctive. Atlanta kind of sounded like other places.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, since Mojo made that first record, Jump, Stomp, and Twist in '86, you know, there's been steady product coming out of Atlanta. So cats like, but we took more cues from. When you talk about Atlanta's sound, Atlanta's sound took more cues from Miami than it did from New York, or just as much. You know what I mean? But bass was the sound. That was the dominant music style. That was what kept people moving. You know what I mean? Bass, tempo-wise, you know, is anything, bass music, bass songs went, Atlanta bass went from anywhere like 117 beats per minute up to about 125.
Okay.
Miami bass music started at about 125 and went up to about 140. Ooh. So you cats like Uncle Al, you know, Luke Scarred, you know, Captain D's coming. Captain D's coming. That record's 140 beats per minute. That shit's moving.
Yeah, that's fast.
But, you know, when you look at Atlanta's dance style, that's that, you know, that bass sound lended to the way we dance. You know, nobody on this planet. I've lived in D.C., I've lived in New York, I've lived in Vegas, I've lived a lot of different places, and visited even more. But no place did the yeek dance. That was an Atlanta thing, and again, I keep stressing the point, was Atlanta was a dance scene. You know, it was all about dancing. You know, now we don't have dancing. We got kind of bouncing. You know what I mean? We got twerking. You know what I mean? But look, I definitely don't want to see no dudes twerking. So, you know, it's like, please. But yeah, so, you know, talking about that, you know, Atlanta sound, we got to get back. What I would like to see is Atlanta get back to a dance floor. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon, but with Atlanta, one thing I noticed, and this is going to tie back into the bass question too, was that like dancers like the Charles, you know, that became the Roger Rabbit or the Bart Simpson, or as it moved away from Atlanta. One thing I noticed as a New Yorker coming to Atlanta, and I was an arrogant New Yorker. You know, if y'all know any New Yorkers, New Yorkers are arrogant as hell for almost no reason whatsoever. So when I came down, it was like, you know, I'm looking at what cats are doing here. You know, everybody was wearing duck head pants and Genera shirts, polka dots. The hair was high right, low left. You know what I mean? And the girls with the isometric cuts, and I was like, man, this some country ass shit. This country, oh man, we never do nothing like this in New York.
Hey,
you know what I'm saying? I stayed here 1 year entirely.
Yeah.
86, from August of 86 to July of 87. When I went back to New York in July of 87, everything that I said was country and was whack and cats in New York would never do. They were doing it.
Yeah.
That's when I realized, you know,
these cats.
Man, it ain't where you're from. You know what I mean? Really, it's where you're at. And what it also showed me was that a lot of stuff that I gave credit to New York for wasn't necessarily a New York thing. You know what I mean? So it was like, okay, and so let's tie it back into the topic. When you talk about Atlanta's sound, the bass sound, I mean, our bass was still fast. It was still fast music, but it kind of picked up. The way I kind of put it is that every place outside of New York picked a couple of songs that they liked out of New York and built their sound around it. New York, I mean, of course people will always argue this, but Chicago, they like those faster, up-tempo, kind of naked beats. So the early house music, trance music, was still kind of Planet Rock-ish. You know what I mean? It was still in that electro-y kind of tempo. It was that electro-y feel. Especially when you talk about what Detroit was doing. The early Detroit techno was like, it was fast as hell. You know what I mean? And then they, techno hop in L.A. was all of that, Uncle Jam's Army stuff. What's my man's name who got left out of the NWA movie? Arabian Prince. All that Wrecking Crew stuff, all that music was fast. That was all up-tempo stuff. So as it's coming back around the country, it just stuck in Miami. And Miami and Atlanta, were very similar in what they were doing. Atlanta bass was way more musical.
Yeah.
Yo, we back with part 2 of the Down South podcast interview with DJ Talib Shabazz.
Vinny, when you coming out the kitchen?